Today we're talking to Jonathon Weeks and Fraser Watson, founders of mobile hosted and IT solutions provider Pescado, and they're going to share with us some of their experiences from their successful disposal to Arrow and some of the lessons that they've learned along the way. So my first question to you, Johnny, is when and why did you form Pescado?
I'll take you back probably to the year 2000. Fraser and I both joined the retail company Iceland at the same time. We formed a strong bond from that moment, and it became quite clear that it was that wasn't where we were going to end up. And we had previously done various ventures into doing our own thing. We'd always said, when the right idea comes along, this is what we'll do. And various circumstances changed, and 6 years later, the opportunity to start Pescado came, and we both jumped at it and went, let's give it a go.
And you became one of Vodafone's leading partners. So how did you get there?
Well, we originally started trading with a distribution house, and as you grow with distribution houses, you realise that there are other ways of negotiating the industry. So we had a conversation with Vodafone probably about a year and a half into trading, and we managed through, I'll say, skill, charm and promises, but I'm sure there was a bit of luck involved, to get an advancement loan from Vodafone. And we started putting connections on with them, and basically got a reputation for being able to deliver certain volumes, certain types of connections, certain types of customers, and make sure we were steady all the time at delivering those for them. And we gained realistically a great relationship with Vodafone, but also that started to filter through with the other networks, because being agnostic to us at the time was, and still is, really important.
Okay, and what were some of your objectives with creating the company?
Working for ourselves, being able to make the decisions that we wanted to make. I think we were both, when I left the company that I was with before we started Pescado, the CEO said to me, I'd like to join you on your last day. And I was in the car with him, and he said, I'm really, really pleased that you're leaving. And he explained that the problem was that when I made decisions, I made them based on what I thought was right rather than what I was told to do. So he said, you were a pain in the backside. Most of the decisions you made were right, but it caused me a lot of headaches when everyone else saw what you were doing. So it was really about being able to be the masters of our own destiny, was the key objective, really.
Fantastic. Now, you've achieved some phenomenal success and growth over the years. And what were some of the key factors that contributed towards that?
I think one of the key factors is fear of failure. A lot of people will talk about, it's great to be successful, but having a young family at the time, mortgage, I came from a corporate role, and when Johnny's just been talking there about, why we did it, I'm virtually unemployable and worse than Johnny on that stage. So there was, fear of failure was absolutely at the forefront of my mind, and that panic to keep driving all the time was one of the biggest. I think we understood pretty quickly that just being a mobile player was not going to get us into the right area. It was like Groundhog Day. You sold something, you received commission, tomorrow you started again. And that really does, it's great, it puts the pressure on you, but you understand that to get that freedom that Johnny talked about, and to be able to develop the business, you needed different income streams. So I think the decision was probably the first, the failure to buy an IT business was actually probably one of the successes, because it drove us even harder to getting into other things. In fact, the first business we tried to buy, we failed, but what we did do was manage to gain an employee who's still with us today. It's been instrumental in the growth. So adding in the hosted telephony, the connectivity, those longer term 5, 6, 7 year products really helps you be able to stand back, get out of the monotony of the Groundhog Day. So I think that's key to what made us successful in the end.
And throughout your journey, you've come across and overcome all sorts of obstacles, but what were your biggest challenges that you've come across?
Your greatest assets and therefore your potential liabilities are always the people. It's what makes the business. I look back at some people that we have taken on and then lost. I'd like to say one of the successes has been that we've managed to hold a very high percentage of those people, and the reverse is true of those that haven't contributed. And I think we've been very fortunate in building a really, really strong team, and strong in every area and department of the business, and I think that's been a massive contribution towards the success, I would say.
So when did you actually make the decision to plan your exit? Was it something that you started from day one, or did it come along part way through?
We had a session probably within the first year. It was actually down in London, and then in a pub somewhere in Shropshire, where we just met a friend of Johnny's actually, who said, "Oh, you could be worth X, Y, Z," and he drew it on a board and said, "This is how you to get there." And both of us, I suppose, being a bit naive and a bit northern, kind of just ran back and went, "Yeah, right, let's just get on with selling." But there became a point where you do start to look at what options are available, and that was probably 3.5 years ago. We started discussing it. To be honest, we took a phone call from a different set of advisors, and Johnny and I ended up in the car one afternoon going up and sitting in front of somebody, and we heard a theoretical valuation, and we thought, really, can this happen? So we went and saw another one, and they confirmed it. So we sat down, had a think, and said, well, let's not decide which pathway to go down. Let's try and get the right advisors on board. So if we choose to do this, then we've got the right advice, because it was clear when all this started, we were, so far adrift with what we thought something could be worth to what it actually was worth.
So what were you looking for in appointing an advisor? What were the main talents you were looking for?
We saw a couple of advisors, 3 or 4, I think, before we came upon Evolution Capital, and none of them gelled well with us. Some of them were super slick, some of them were really salesy, and we wanted somebody that represented who we were and who our business, and what our business was, and a bit more like us really, just normal, fairly down to earth, easy to get on with, trustable people, and that was very apparent very early on, because as Fraz said, we hadn't decided which route we would go down if we were going to take any route at all, but whether it was PE, whether it was trade sale, whatever it was going to be, we didn't know. We just needed to find somebody that we trusted and that were a fair representation of us.
So Pescado selected Evolution Capital, and what was it about them? Was it their sector knowledge? We've mentioned trustworthiness. Or was it their preparation, their market intelligence? What was good about them?
I think, as Johnny just said, when we went round a couple to start with, it was clear to me that there were advisors that wanted to put you in a box and sell you very quickly, and there were advisors that wanted to push you down a certain route. And having not decided what we were actually going to do, Nigel and the team, to be fair, said, let's understand your business, let us go away and find out all of the options available, and then let's come back, sit down and talk it through. There was no salesy part of it for months, was there?
Yeah.
It was just relationships and spreadsheets.
So it's more of a discovery exercise and
Absolutely.
To give you your options.
100%, yeah.
So you started with a strategic planning phase,
yeah.
And was that a surprise?
We've never been through it,
Yes,
so I think the whole thing was a
surprise.
surprise.
Yeah.
But you learned very quickly that the objective, Evolution's objective, was to merely show you through the window of what the opportunity could look like, but make sure that whichever window we went through, then the due diligence and the backup and the evidence was there, whichever way we went.
Yeah.
So that was great to start with.
Yeah, and I think because this was unknown territory to us, and pretty important that we got it right. The fact that they understood that, that they were very transparent, they clearly explained everything to us, put everything on the table, that was very important.
And did those objectives that you started with change at all during the process as you went forward?
First of all, how we were going to, what route we were going to take, whether it be a sale to within the industry or whether it would be private equity and mergers and acquisition strategy. And it became clear that the route that we wanted to go down was going to be trade sale, but it was then a question of, well who? Because and that was really where evolution helped guide us and helped us make the right decisions as to what sort of businesses were right for us. You know, we spent a lot of time building this business, and we don't want to let it go to the wrong person who then just train wrecks it. So the right buyer was critical.
Okay, well, you obviously achieved some outstanding outcomes during the process of the sale. And what did Evolution Capital do so differently that enabled your shareholders, you, to achieve that outcome?
I think there wasn't, throughout any of the process, there wasn't one time where I thought that they weren't fighting, defending, providing detailed evidence of why something should be there. So right backs, future growth, extending your revenues beyond just contractual terms, for example. These are things that were new to us, completely new, and therefore when they were challenged, where we would naturally go, oh well, you're right, that's the end of the contract, so maybe that's where the value finishes. The team at Evolution, to be fair, just had it wasn't that they ever even had to scramble for the information. It was just a quick call with us, double check where the relationships, for example, were, and then they would go into bat with the acquirer.
And the pandemic, lockdown came right the way through the process. How did that change things as you went on? Or didn't you, or did you just drive straight through it?
Well, I mean, it wasn't just the pandemic. I mean, we were sort of in the throes. We had made our decision. We knew which route we'd gone down. Evolution had the IM out there, and then the Chancellor decided that Entrepreneurs Relief would completely change. So that was the first one. So there was a mad scramble to see whether or not we could get ahead of the curve. March 2020 came, and COVID hit, and we locked down. There were some strong advantages for us, strangely enough, as well as some significant disadvantages. There was nobody travelling anywhere, so revenues were down in one stream, and yet everyone had to work from home, and there was a mad scramble of customers saying, please help us. And then meanwhile in the background we're still trying to go through due diligence. So I'm sure there were other challenges that came after that.
You're desperately trying to keep things stable, not wanting any of the team to know something's going on underneath. So that's actually one of the biggest challenges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Evolution Capital pride themselves on their collaborative approach to their preparation, but how did you find them to work with?
Their attention to detail is just exceptional. I personally have learned just so much through this process, and as difficult as it was, it's been quite enjoyable, and mainly because we've had Evolution on our fighting in our corner. Duncan is exceptionally good at what he does, and I was saying to him recently, when the guys, the other side's representatives went through the due diligence, I mean, they had a good team, but how long it took them to try and get their head around the nuances of our industry, and every industry has its nuances. It just took them forever, and I was just struggling to, why don't you understand this? But actually, Duncan got his head around it pretty quick, and that takes some doing. Yeah.
I think there was also within that, we were advised on what to do during due diligence, and from a legal perspective, who we should choose for legal advice as well. And actually, to be fair to Evolution, we wanted to use our own advisors, legal advisors, who've been with us for 15 years.
Yep.
Because we thought that was important, they understood us. And those conversations were had, we weren't forced to use anybody. It was, here's some advice, this is why we're giving you the advice. And on certain ones we said, no, we want to do it this way. And Evolution accommodated, so that was great for us.
So you started the process and opted for a strategic review. In hindsight, was that the right way to go?
100%. It gave us, all the way through, it gave us, we weren't closing in. Every step of that strategic review just opened another avenue for us to be able to discuss. So whether it was I leave the business, Jonathon leaves the business, we both leave, one of us stays, there's private equity investment, total sale, everything just kept fanning open, so we were able to make considered and educated decisions.
So uncovered things that you hadn't actually considered before in the...
I think when Johnny said before, we have both learned so much through this process that you feel you could now do it again. Yeah. I'm not saying necessarily we could do it better, but certainly would be less stressful. Yep. And a bit more exciting, whereas this is the first time you've done it, you are so pouring over everything and so into it, sometimes you need to step back and just enjoy the ride.
So you thought you got maximum value by starting off with the strategic review?
Yes, 100%.
Right, okay. You've already alluded to some of this stuff, but what were your big takeaways from this actual process of starting with the review to the exit at the end? What were some of your biggest things you learned from that?
Stay open. Don't focus in on one thing, and also don't get your hopes up, because there are so many pitfalls along the way, and so much where we would have a discussion, one thinks one thing, one thinks the other. At the advisory firm doing the due diligence, as Johnny says, has got the wrong end of the stick or doesn't see it in our way. You have to be able to just take it one step at a time, and we actually didn't feel under pressure by anybody whilst we fumbled around and learnt how it all worked. It was just questions, answers, and if we, at every stage, if we said we don't want to move forwards now, then everybody paused and we had a good chat about it.
Yeah, it's a significant bit of work to undertake, particularly when you've just appointed a new advisor coming in. Did it take much persuasion for you to get on with the strategic review?
No. We made the decision and that was it, because from our side you made the decision that when the strategic review has been done, you could close the book and say thank you very much and walk away.
Yeah. So what was the sort of information and analysis that you developed during this period from the strategic review to some of the other ongoing bits of the process?
Do you remember how many lines of Excel there were at one point? It was millions, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously the strategic review was done to, as Fraser said, give us the ability to make considered decisions. From there, the IM was produced, and that started to, the level of detail started to get more significant, and the level of information they needed became greater, and then following the IM, once we started to look at potential interested parties and identify those, that's when the real detail work started.
And when this was sent out to the interested parties, when you had almost a beauty parade, did that match your expectations?
It probably exceeded them. Again, because we hadn't been through it, we didn't really know what to expect. I mean, we were surprised when the first suggested valuations came out. Then you're surprised at the number of interested parties, and you don't really think that that's going to happen. And then the number of interested parties surprised us again, and yeah, we were quite nicely surprised.
So getting towards the end of the process, was the earn-out process satisfactory?
Yes, I guess we've heard some horror stories, and you can get very blinded about what people are going to pay you up front and all the rest of it. But getting the whole consideration was absolutely critical to us, not only for Johnny and myself, but the minority shareholders as well. And all the way through the relationship with the senior team at Arrow, we're involved with ensuring that we hit our consideration. If we hit our consideration, they have purchased us for a reason, and they want to continue on their growth story. So through the earn-out period, it's actually been more help having them on board, because we're all actually aiming for the same goal. If it works for us, it is for sure going to work for them.
What's the future for life looking like after Pescado?
What's life like after Pescado? It's pretty exciting. Opportunities are significant. Could do anything. I've got a couple of projects on at the moment personally, so I can focus on those a little bit more, and then who knows.
Okay, well, good luck with that. What about you, Fraser?
Throughout the process, I got to know Chris and Rich at Arrow pretty well, and we've had conversations around, well, what are you going to do post earn-out, and I've had conversations with my wife about going cycling each day and enjoying life. Not that I wasn't enjoying life previously, but then you realise that that's probably not going to happen 5 days a week. So we've made a decision that I'm going to continue with the Arrow business and help them with whatever skills I have through their journey over the next couple of years. And then, similar to Johnny, I've got youngish kids. When they hopefully flee the nest, then my wife and I will do something a little more interesting.
So to other business owners, shareholders planning their exit, would you recommend this process, and would you recommend Evolution Capital to run it for you?
I think the shareholders review, the initial finding out about your business from Evolution was critical. I think I would urge everybody to do it, even if they stop, because you learn so much through that process. Evolution has been brilliant. There's no pushing. There's no. I haven't felt that I've been sold to when the business is being sold. It's been a really good partnership.
And what about you, Jonathon?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Fraser said. I think the strategic review is a critical initial stage. But yes, I would highly recommend them. They're not. As far as they didn't push us, there's no sales process there. They really held our hands through it. They understood what it was that we wanted initially, and they delivered on all fronts. They found a buyer that was a perfect match for us, and they found a price that was pretty good too. And we were very wet behind the ears, but they kept close by our side throughout the whole process, and that was excellent.
So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Evolution Capital is the first UK corporate finance boutique to exclusively focus on providing advice to the ICT sector. We are the leaders in our field. With activities spanning 3 decades, we have provided strategic and transactional advice to over 200 technology entrepreneurs, shareholders and management teams of both privately owned and public companies. We deliver outstanding transactional outcomes by unlocking intrinsic value in our clients' businesses, by providing expert advice based on meticulous analysis and robust methodologies. This is who we are and how we do it.